Welcome back. You're watching Closing Bell East Africa. As Kenya tables its annual $3 trillion budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, the country is at a crossroad as President William Ruto's administration implements aggressive tax proposals to cut down on expensive borrowing. CNBC Africa had an exclusive interview with business mogul Jimi Wanjigi. Here's more.
It is an open secret that we have a big challenge with our debt servicing ratio. Our estimates on revenue collections this closing financial year are bringing our debt to service ratio to 70% and above. That is the challenge that President William Ruto is trying to address by raising taxation. This bill is a bill that is unworkable. It is proposing in its targets to raise revenue that is currently estimated to close at between 1.8 to 1.9 trillion Kenya shillings by another 1 trillion in the next financial year to 2.9 trillion. This is a statistical impossibility. It has never happened. The previous two regimes, it took them 10 years to get to that sort of appreciation, and they never even quite got to that figure. So this is a bill that will not achieve its target of revenue, and it is an attempt to run away from the monster in the room. The monster in the room is our debt. We can no longer sustain the kind of debt servicing ratio we have, and our future is at a crossroad, and this is not the way to address it.
Tax authorities are on record saying that tax collection has improved. They are using modern systems to be able to get and expand their tax bracket. And for purposes, for argument's sake, the president is on record also saying that these targets are achievable. They just need to tighten the loose ends and ensure everyone pays their due tax.
I would like us to just discuss some history. When the President Mwai Kibaki took over in 2003, the tax collection in the country by the previous regime was something to do with just under 200 billion shillings. It took him 10 years to raise tax revenue to 1 trillion shillings. That is the figure he handed over to President Uhuru. President Uhuru has left with a tax revenue of between 1.8 and 1.9 trillion. In other words, an appreciation over 10 years of 800 to 900 billion shillings. It is an impossibility in this country that in 1 year you can do an appreciation that took two previous presidents 10 years to do. In 1 year, you can raise our tax revenue from 1.8, 1.9 trillion to 2.9 trillion is a statistical impossibility, especially at a time when we are going through what we are calling stagnation. We are stagnating, and we also have inflation. We are going through stagflation here. It is an impossibility, even with the best of leadership.
And looking at the debt situation at the moment, we've heard from the Cabinet Secretary in charge of National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, maintaining that Kenya is able to service its debt obligations. We've also had the IMF, of course, have indicated that our debt to GDP ratio is getting into a level that is not sustainable anymore. So who is not telling us the truth?
I believe the Treasury is not telling us the truth, if that is their assertion. You see, we investigated this debt, and we did a forensic audit of this debt. And I can tell you authoritatively, with figures, because fortunately, our laws insist that all these books are published for public knowledge. So we have the appropriations development where the debt is anchored in our laws. That is the Constitution, that is the Public Finance Management Act. And over the last 10 years, we as a country, the sovereign, through its representatives in parliament, passed a total of 2 trillion shillings for debt to be taken to projects. That debt is clearly put in a schedule. We know where we are getting that debt from. We know what project is being financed and which ministry is to then distribute those funds through an exchequer issue. Over the last 10 years, our parliament has approved on our behalf as Kenyans 2 trillion shillings worth of debt. But when we go to our consolidated fund account, what is called the exchequer account in the Central Bank of Kenya, it is showing that debt that was taken over the last 10 years is 6.1 trillion shillings, 4.1 trillion shillings more than we have passed in our parliament. This is the misnomer because that 4.1 trillion did not go towards any project. It would have been assigned a project only in parliament where you get a vote. Now, this is not only the issue. We further went on, and these were figures done to March 2022. We went on and we said, what is the total debt outstanding? And we found a figure of 8.4 trillion in the exchequer account statements.
The figures you are proposing and tabling here, they are not independently verifiable by CNBC Africa, and for now they just remain as mere claims.
I think if you see the budget, they are still going to borrow close to about 600 billion. That is proposed vis-a-vis the deficit. And they are raising taxes. As I said, if you look at the figures, they are proposing to raise 1 trillion more in taxes, which I'm saying is an impossibility to raise.
I just want to get you a quick assessment of the tax proposals and what is the best way out, considering that the government on one side is indicating that they want to stop the high borrowing that was there in the previous regime, and at the same time, they have to raise domestic taxes.
Now, they are running away from the debt problem. And our view is that the debt should be addressed directly and not by trying to come back to us as taxpayers. And there are 3 options we have. We have the possibility of debt rescheduling. That is one option. And that single one option would mean that we bring our 3 clubs of debt, the London Club, the Paris Club, and the Chinese, to the table, analyze and audit the debt, and agree on a payment rescheduling. This was done by President Moi in 1995, and then it was only one main club called the Paris Club, and it was very successful. That will cushion us with the kind of debt payments that we are trying to make, that we are making going forward. The second is that we do what other countries have done around the world, declare default and get breathing space. The model I've seen that has worked fairly well, although it's very painful initially, has been the Ghanaian model, where we have the debt distress exchange, where everybody takes a haircut on their debt, including the banks, and they went domestically, including customers in banks who have bank accounts, and it cushions repayments for a period of time with interest, and it has immediate ramifications that are painful. They've had an inflation rate that has gone to almost 50% over the last 6 months. It's coming down now. But it is saving them huge payments this financial year this financial year and the next. Now, we have a huge payment this year. So that would cushion us that payment going out. And although we may feel some major pain in the initial stages, we are going to save money, and that can be plowed back rather than more taxation. We can even reduce taxation. We can start a journey towards demand-side economics. The third option is the option I was mentioning about ODS debt. Now, our figures are verified. These are public figures. We have taken nothing else but an audit from public record. So in as much as you're saying you have not verified what we are saying, we have just audited public records. We've taken the Appropriations Acts. We have taken the figures that have been publicly stated in the exchequer account of CBK. These figures have been collaborated severally through various fora, including the current budget, what are the outstanding figures as of March last year, and you can check the accumulation since. These are figures that are verifiable anywhere because we are using the same figures that everybody knows.
Well, that was Jimi Wanjigi speaking to us exclusively here on CNBC Africa. And that conversation takes us to a close for today's edition of Closing Bell East Africa. My name is Abi Gina. We shall be having wall-to-wall coverage of Kenya's budget come tomorrow, as well as Uganda and Tanzania. Join us for that. At the top of the hour, we do have Closing Bell Southern Africa. Have a great